Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat?
So let's start with Jameis Winston. Obviously, I mean, that was the huge news earlier this morning. First person I saw with it was Jordan Schultz, and then, I mean, everybody else, follows up and confirms that report. Jameis Winston, of course, now signing with the Cleveland Browns, a one-year deal. He will serve as Deshaun Watson's backup, and there's a lot to unpack there with Jameis. For what it's worth, he did release a statement through Josina Anderson at CBS Sports. I'll go ahead and read that to you now. Quote, yes, I still envision myself as a starter. However, the Lord has called me to lead by impacting and increasing the men who are around me. Having the opportunity to work with Deshaun and help him be the best he can possibly be is my main mission. Now, if Deshaun has to heal up for whatever reason and I have to take a few games off of him, I'm going to be ready to do that. But I have to fulfill God's purpose first before my own heart's desire, because ultimately I desire to win Super Bowls, and this roster that Cleveland got looks like they can do it. That is Jameis Winston to Josina Anderson from CBS Sports on his decision to sign with the Cleveland Browns, a one-year deal in free agency. First and foremost, I'll say this. I, like probably the majority of you listening, if not all of you listening, wanted Jameis Winston to stay with the New Orleans Saints. If for no other reason, I mean, you can obviously throw in the fact that he's a more than capable player at this level in the NFL is exactly what you want in a backup, someone who's been a starter, a former number one pick who can slide in when you have an injury, to Derek Carr, which you did on multiple occasions in 2023, but it wasn't just then, right? I mean, this is a guy who you saw him come in for Drew Brees mid-game certain times in his first year in New Orleans and things of that nature. So you have that. But if for no other reason, you wanted to see him remain in New Orleans because of the way that he embraced the city of New Orleans. And I mean, it's something we always talk about. You embrace the city of New Orleans, it embraces you back. It's really that way with kind of the entire, southeast portion of the state of Louisiana. So, I think it's funny when you look back when Jameis got here and it wasn't, lauded by everybody. Everybody was focused on the interceptions and the personality and crab legs and eating the W and all of that. And it turned out to be personally one of the most perfect connections you could have between him and the city. And you go back in the few weeks leading up to this, where he's out at Mardi Gras or whatnot, and he's being interviewed. And anytime he had a mic in front of his face and he was asked about his future, it was always, I would love to stay in New Orleans, but, and that's where some of this gets a little bit confusing. But before we get into that part and why he made the move and what the Saints obviously do next, I said it turned out to be, personally, one of the, most perfect matches that I don't think any of us really could have imagined. And then on the field, I think you are left with one of the bigger what ifs. Because when you actually go back and look at Jameis's time with the Saints, a lot of it was good, but every time it was good, it got derailed by an injury. He gets here in 2021, backup role, right? But, all right, it's probably going to be it there, and he'll slide into the starting role in the next year, and that's ultimately what happened. And it's going well. We all remember that, right? They're 5-2. They're right there at the top of the NFC South with the Buccaneers, and the interception to touchdown ratio that everyone had stuck under a microscope's great there under Sean Payton. I mean, you're looking at 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions in 2021 through those first 7 games. He obviously goes down with the ACL injury. His season's over. Sean Payton retires. Enter Dennis Allen. And he leads the great comeback in 2022 to start the season against the Falcons, but gets hurt in that game and is never quite the same. Ultimately gets back to health, but isn't ever reinserted. They go with Andy Dalton. And Jameis loses his job due to injury, even though Andy Dalton's not performing at the level that, any of us had hoped or expected that the Saints quarterback should. They bring in Derek Carr. And ultimately now Jameis, he returns when many people didn't think he would in 2023, right? That was a conversation we had plenty going into that offseason. It was, okay, does Jameis actually return? And I mean, no. Many of us thought no, but he did. Still under contract, came back, and now as a free agent will leave. But you had the good in 2021 of him getting you off to that great start and you really being like, okay, this could actually go somewhere. And even going into that offseason, you're thinking, okay, he's going to come back. He's healthy. Look what had happened with Sean Payton. Maybe that was his unlock. Payton retires. It's Allen. And it never really jived there with Dennis Allen. Jameis Winston never felt like Dennis Allen's guy. He felt like Sean Payton's guy. Dennis went out and got his guy, but even when Derek Carr goes down, you need Jameis Winston there. So that's what we're going to get to when we get to the part of, what the Saints do next, obviously. But back to what we said earlier with, I envision myself as a starter. I'd love to stay in New Orleans, but I envision myself as a starter, and I want to compete for Super Bowl. I think the quote Jameis had was, I envision myself as a Super Bowl winning starting quarterback in the NFL. Well, the more you saw those starting opportunities get filled up, the more, I guess, many thought that, okay, Jameis probably ends up back in New Orleans. That'd be a great move for him and the Saints. And he can just stay in the backup role there. And this morning he takes the backup role in Cleveland. And I think while Jameis leaving New Orleans isn't probably surprising, I think the role that he took will surprise many, just because he could have done that here. And he won't. I think it's fair to ask the question, how much of that had to do with what happened in the final game of the season? Because, we already kind of talked about it. It never felt like Jameis was Dennis Allen's guy to begin with. Was he ever really given the fair shake to be the starting quarterback under Dennis Allen in New Orleans? And that's a fair question to ask too, as is, did that ruffle feathers, the touchdown, running up the score on the Falcons there at the end? It was received, incredibly well by the fan base, incredibly well by his teammates. How was it received in the front office? How was it received in, with Dennis Allen? That's a fair question to ask. Was the writing kind of already on the wall there? It's even more of a fair question to ask when he goes and makes a lateral move. He says in his statement there that, the roster that Cleveland has feels like, they can win the Super Bowl, and that's fine. Cleveland's got a nice team. They were a playoff team last year. I think many would look at their situation compared to the Saints and probably take that, considering they're coming off a playoff appearance. But in reality, it is a lateral move for Jameis Winston. So I think that part is where the surprise maybe comes into this a little bit. But ultimately, man, look, I wish Jameis Winston nothing but the best, because it did end up being such a perfect match in reality, him down here. And it would have been great to see him stay for longer. But it was 4 years. And on the field, what if? Off the field, really a perfect match. So best of luck to Jameis Winston as he goes and, is the backup quarterback for Cleveland. And we'll see, where his career takes him from now. That guy will always have a spot here in New Orleans, though, I guarantee you, just because of how he endeared himself to the city. As for what the Saints do next, that's a great question, because you can't go into the season with Jake Haener as your backup quarterback. He has no NFL experience outside of the preseason. That does not feel like a viable option for New Orleans. And as much talk as there was about this free agent class for quarterbacks this offseason, outside of Kirk Cousins, really, what was there? Russell Wilson's obviously a former Super Bowl winning quarterback. That's understood. But what he was the final 2 years in Denver wasn't great. But it looks like he's going to get a starting opportunity in Pittsburgh. But outside of Kirk Cousins, really, what was there? So you have teams that really needed to fill starting roles, like Falcons, who did that with Kirk Cousins. The Broncos obviously still need to do that. And you have teams, obviously, Bears, Commanders, Patriots, who we all think are going to do that in the draft. So when you look at the free agent crop that's left for the Saints to go free agency route to sign a backup quarterback, because I don't think they're going to do it during the draft, through the draft. I don't think they should either. I mean, you got Haener. You drafted Ian Book a few years ago. That didn't really work out. But do you really want to bring in a rookie that you're not going to draft in the first round, mind you, if you were to go that route? Do you really want to bring a rookie in to compete with Haener and that be your options at backup quarterback? A rookie or Jake Haener who has only played in the NFL preseason? No. So I think you can put the draft aside. So you look at the free agent crop, and I mean, Ryan Tannehill's there. He's got time as a starter in this league. It's funny, I'm looking here and Teddy Bridgewater's name there. Teddy Bridgewater's coaching high school football. He's retired. He's not coming out of retirement. As much as I think many would love to see Teddy Bridgewater back. Speaking of someone who endeared himself to New Orleans. Joe Flacco's there. He's 39 years old. Yeah, it was a great run with Cleveland, but do you go that route for Flacco? Something to keep in mind. Trevor Siemian's a free agent. It's not going to get a lot of people excited, but obviously there's history there. So they have options for proven veteran players at the quarterback position to go out and sign, and that they can get on, kind of on the cheap, I would assume, for many of them. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do. That's why I think it would have been so beneficial to bring Jameis Winston back. And it just wasn't in the cards.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.